Everybody, and thanks for joining. I'm going to regale you for about the next 3 or 4 hours. By the time you leave, you'll all be experts yourselves. I want to give you just kind of a quick 101 about what's happening in India, persecution, especially of Christians, but also of other religious minorities like Muslims, and kind of why it's happening. To start, I have to introduce you to this organization. This organization is known as the RSS, and you can see them here marching a couple of years ago in the streets of Hyderabad, India, southern India. The RSS is 99 years old, 100 years old next year. It is an all-male, uniformed, armed paramilitary organization. And the RSS is devoted to an ideology which is colloquially known as Hindutva. Basically, it's Hindu nationalism. The ideology that they follow is parallel or equivalent to like Zionism or Christian nationalism, and advocates, as you can see, for the idea that people who live in India should only be Hindus, that India should be a Hindu nation for and only for Hindu people. And Amnesty International, for instance, has recognized it. Well, this RSS, paramilitary organization, it's the head of a whole family of Hindutva organizations, which are subsidiaries to it, including here in America, we have direct corollaries or direct wings of the RSS. I'm not going to go into all of that right now, but it's just important to know that the RSS is like the mothership that oversees this whole network of subsidiary Hindu nationalist groups. Just quickly, a couple of them, and to contextualize the importance or the reach of the RSS. The RSS itself has about 6 million members, and I mentioned the family. This is one of the subsidiary organizations. The VHP is the religious wing, 7 million members. The Bajrang Dal is the youth wing of the religious wing, 5 million members. These are just some of the big three, including the RSS. That's put together, that's what, 18 million members within the three largest groups in this family of Hindu nationalist organizations headed by the RSS. This militant Hindutva armed network of Hindu nationalist groups. And the RSS today not only has those subsidiaries, but it also has a subsidiary which is a political wing, which is more commonly known in the West, which is the BJP, the political party which has ruled India for the past decade, since 2014, with approximately 200 million members almost, and with the BJP leadership, including people who are also RSS members. So, for instance, Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, has been a lifelong member of the RSS. The Home Minister of India, who's kind of got a long reputation as the right-hand man of Modi, and the Home Minister is in charge of internal law and order in the country. He's an RSS member, and so on. In fact, about 75% last count of the entire national cabinet of India has an RSS background. So, significant presence of the RSS in the government of India, controlling it for the past decade. Arundhati Roy, internationally renowned journalist, she's described the RSS as basically becoming like originally a shadow government of India through the BJP, but now basically de facto the state in India. The RSS rules India, this paramilitary organization. Now, I want to give you, before I move on to what's happening to Christians, Muslims, a quick understanding of why the RSS ruling India is such a huge problem. See, these three men are some of the major ideologues behind the formation of the RSS and what it believes. And they, all three of them, in the 1930s, 1940s, they were pointing directly to the Italian and German fascists who were their contemporaries as inspirations and models to follow. The biggest difference, of course, between the fascists in Europe, especially the Nazis, and the fascists, these people in India, was that the fascists in Europe targeted Jews, and in India it's Christians and Muslims primarily. So this man, Savarkar, he authored the original manifesto titled Hindutva, which is where the term for Hindu nationalist ideology was popularized. He praised Nazi Germany for its Aryan ideals. He argued that the Nazi treatment of the Jews showed how the majority has some kind of an inherent right to drive out the minority. And he said in so many words that he believed that what the Nazis were doing to the Jews, that was how India should treat Muslims, in particular in India. This is Golvarkar. This man, this RSS paramilitary organization, they have what's known as a supreme commander. This man is the most influential one. He's today known as the guru of the RSS. 33 years he led the RSS, and he did things like he praised the race spirit and the racial consciousness which was arising in Germany and in Italy. He insisted that, pointing to the European fascists, that the European fascists had basically demonstrated that people around the world had a right to define nationality by race, and he called Hindus a race. And he described anyone who doesn't fit into this race as having turned traitor for not adhering to the national race. And he, this RSS leader, he defined, writing in his manifesto, written in 1939, just as Hitler was sparking off the Second World War with the invasion of Poland, in his manifesto, he said he defined traitors to the national race as being non-Hindus, especially Christians and Muslims in India. He called them foreign elements, internal threats, and you can see other things he said about Muslims and Christians. Christians he called bloodsuckers, who will always remain as hostiles here and should be treated as hostiles in India. And for a solution, he looked over to Nazi Germany in particular. Writing this, as you can see, this is written in 1939, and you can read it, but basically he's praising the race pride manifested by the Nazis in purging the country of Germany of the Jews. And then he goes on to argue how Germany has demonstrated the impossibility, the unworkability of multiculturalism, and calls it a good lesson to learn and profit by, basically looking over to what how the Jews were being treated by Nazi Germany in the late 1930s as a model for the way the minorities should be treated in India. Now, with that kind of an underlying ideology expressed in the 1930s and on, it's no surprise that Hindutva and the RSS have produced a very bloody history in the past 80 plus years. They've engaged in assassinations, including RSS member assassinated Gandhi, lynchings, terrorist bombings in the 2000s against minorities, against Muslims, pogroms, massacres, and you can see a list of the top ones in the past, 30 years. Gujarat is notable in 2002 because the current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, this lifelong RSS member, was the chief minister, the head of state of Gujarat at the time when this occurred. And he's implicated in overseeing, allowing, encouraging this massacre of Muslims, which lasted for about 3 days and left about 2,000 Muslims dead. And he was actually banned from America by the US State Department due to his involvement in that massacre. Most recently, we have Manipur in the northeast of India, where Christian tribals have been targeted with an underlying Hindutva ideology backing the attackers operating with state sanction in a state which is ruled by the BJP, this Hindu nationalist political party, and the attackers being armed with modern weaponry, assault rifles, etc., having killed approximately, it's hard to say in the fog of war, but perhaps 200 or more Christian tribals, burned down at least 400 churches. and gang raped and paraded naked on camera, Christian tribal women, etc., and displaced about 65,000 people. Now, sound is not necessary because you won't understand the language and it's subtitled anyways, but I just want to give you a sense of the environment which is being spread around India by adherents of Hindutva, by usually all of these tend to be members of the BJP. Sometimes these events include BJP officials, elected officials at them. This was a couple of years ago in the capital of the country. And just look at what they're doing. This is an oath-taking ceremony being led. This is in Delhi. They're taking an oath until their last breath. To make India a Hindu nation and keep it a Hindu-only nation.
Shades up.
And they will fight, die, kill if required. Complete. This is being led by a BJP and I believe also RSS member who owns a very prominent right-wing television news station. This is not being led by a fringe nobodies. This was a couple of years ago in central India. I don't know what's happening with sound, but mosques and madrasas are dangerous. Churches are dangerous. Notice the packed hall. Packed hall. Islam is a fast poison. Christianity is a slow poison. And so what do you do with poison? Well, Islam should be wiped off, not just from India, but the earth, is what this gentleman says. Christians should also be wiped off, not just from India, but from the earth. This last one, just to give you a sense, a taste of the kind of social climate that is being fostered and cultivated over in India. And these are just a few of many examples. This was in Haridwar, the holy city of Haridwar. If any of you have heard of Rishikesh, where the Beatles used to go, this is very close to Rishikesh, just probably about 20, 30 minutes away from it. Haridwar. So again, taking an oath that even if I lose my life, and sure, a Muslim won't be prime minister in 2029. That's the next election after the one that's happening now. The Hindus should increase their population, and they want to decrease the population of India, of Indian Muslims. Ready to kill in order to decrease the population. Kill 20 lakh Muslims. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's 2 million. Yeah. And then once they kill 2 million Muslims, then they'll be victorious. So that's what's happening in India. Many other examples I could share with you. These people are all affiliated with Hindutva, with the RSS, with the BJP, with the Hindu nationalist movement in India. Now,
is it still all men?
I'll get to that. So, moving to a close, as far as giving you a sense of that, an understanding of Hindutva, its fascist origins, its violent actions over the past several decades. Now what's happening, and you can see this is end of 2021. This is in the Washington Post by an Indian Muslim woman, Rana Ayub, very famous journalist in India. She has warned, for instance, she's questioned, and she continues to. She just did an interview, prominent interview the other day, actually, where she was contrasting what's happening in Gaza, in Palestine, with what's happening in India, and comparing Modi to Netanyahu. But in the context of India, she's, and many other people are talking about how there's an impending genocide of Muslims in India. She talks about how the genocide and ethnic cleansing calls, which some of which you just saw, the assassin of Gandhi, who was an RSS member, is being glorified in India today, modern India today, which is true. The assassin of Gandhi in India today is from Delhi by top officials in the BJP treated as a hero. And there are statues being put up of him around the country. And then she goes on to talk about how there is a silent majority of the Hindu community which doesn't necessarily belong or support this Hindutva, but is failing to denounce it. And then, just a couple of quick things. Muslims being lynched in the streets, I could go into that. That's true. It's happening all the time for many reasons. In many scenarios, Christmas celebrations being attacked. The government of India is stripping away through what's known as the Foreign Contributions Regulation Act, which regulates foreign money coming in to support NGOs. They're stripping away licensure for thousands of international support systems and NGOs. Like they stripped it away from Compassion International, is one of the ones that made international headlines a few years ago. They even temporarily did it for Mother Teresa's charity before they were forced to cave to international pressure. The New York Times, speaking of Christians specifically, has this to say about what's happening to them. That vigilantes are sweeping through villages, storming churches, burning literature, attacking schools, and assaulting worshipers. And I've talked about that many times. I've talked about that here at this conference, a couple of different occasions, about what's happening to Indian Christians is that their worship services, in hundreds of instances, Christians in India are holding Sunday worship services, and those services are invaded by mobs of sometimes up to 500 people who are armed and typically accompanied by the police. The mobs go in, smash everything up, beat up the congregation, the clergy, and if the police aren't already with them, what they do is they take those Christians and they drag them down to the police station, hand them over to the police, and the police file charges against the victims, not the perpetrators. And the reason that the police do that is because they accuse these Christians who are worshiping on Sunday in their sanctuary of engaging in false conversion, of fraudulently trying to hoodwink people into becoming Christians simply because they're gathering for Sunday worship. And so you can see the New York Times described how the very act of worship has become dangerous in India for Christians, and that many Christians have become so frightened that they are trying to pass themselves off as Hindus, which is true, actually. There are anywhere from probably about 45 to 60 million Christians in India, maybe more, but the actual count is difficult to nail down because a lot of Christians in India, especially today, don't want to openly identify as Christians because of the risk to them if they do so.
Is that also true, like in the South and Kerala and around where there's higher Christian?
I'll get to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how bad is it? Well, just a couple of statistics quickly to kind of give you a sense. This is one of the leading India, Delhi-based organizations, which is focused on human rights for Indian Christians. It's ecumenical. And they've been tracking numbers of incidents of violence against Christians in India since about 2013, I believe. So you can see in 2014, that's when Modi first came to power, there were only 127 violent incidents against Christians in India throughout the country, and then 720 last year, which is, if I'm not mistaken, math is not my forte, a six-fold increase in a decade. Now, Fiacona, and my friend Reverend Neil Christie is the executive director of Fiacona, DC-based, the only organization in America which is an umbrella group for Indian American Christians. They have been tracking these things a little bit more comprehensively, and they've documented in 2022, and I believe their 2023 numbers are about on par, almost 1,200 attacks in 2022 compared to 761 in 2021. So that is close to twice as many in
And-
1 year.
And the 2023 numbers that we're tracking, which other organizations are not, are the attacks in Manipur, 400 church burnings, the number of women who have been attacked. And so we have data that other organizations simply aren't tracking. So that's significantly higher now.
An international Christian concern, as you see, they ranked India this past year in 2023 as the third among 10 of the world's top persecutors of Christians globally. Open Doors USA, one of the major watchdogs for persecution of Christians around the world, they've ranked India as the 11th most dangerous country in the world in which to be a Christian. And India actually, for the 4 years before that, was 10th most dangerous. And they've become 11th not because anything improved, actually things are getting significantly worse, including with the violence against Christians in the state of Manipur in 2023, which is when that number was given to India, but simply because conditions in another country, I believe in Afghanistan, worsened for Christians. So nothing's improved. India's in the top 10 to 11, or is number 10 or number 11 most dangerous country in the world in which to be a Christian, with persecution levels ranked as extreme, where it's been for several years. And contextualizing that with where other countries rank, that puts India on the same level when it comes to persecution of Christians as Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and surprisingly, actually worse than China or even Saudi Arabia. In other words, conditions for Christians in Saudi Arabia at the moment are ranked as better than conditions for Christians in India. So, having given you a sense of all that, where things are going now, India is heading into it's happening right now, into general elections. Modi's been in office as the prime minister of the country for 2 terms. He is almost certainly, barring a miracle, going to be winning, probably with a landslide, a 3rd term. And as he's been on the campaign trail just a couple of days ago, it's made international headlines, you can see. He's been doing things like using communal anti-minority language to rile up his vote base. Specifically in this case, talking about how Muslims in India are infiltrators, they produce too many children, and you need to vote for me because if you vote for my opposition, then Indian Muslims are going to take away all of your benefits that you might otherwise get here in India. So it's a very dangerous situation. And the last question, and this should be discussed at much greater length, is what can we do? Well, we are doing a couple of things, and the UMC has already done something. First, the UMC has passed, I believe,
So the first resolution of
Yesterday?
any church,
yesterday?
day before yesterday.
Day before yesterday, 2 days ago, the UMC became the first church to pass as an entire polity, as an entire church body, a resolution, a petition that does 3 things. Basically, it denounces Hindu nationalism, Hindutva, along with other forms of ethno-nationalism and religious nationalism. It condemns the persecution of Christians and other religious minorities in India, and stands in solidarity with them. And it calls on the U.S. State Department to designate India as a country of particular concern, which is something that the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has been recommending for the past 4 or 5 years, and which is a recommendation that has, for the past 4 or 5 years, been completely, repeatedly ignored by the U.S. State Department. And if that happened, what that would allow, if India became designated as a country of particular concern, is for the U.S. government to begin imposing things like targeted sanctions, not sanctions against India, nobody wants that, but targeted sanctions against specific individuals who are implicated in crimes against minorities in India. And also to do things like preventing specific individuals from doing what they have been doing and are doing, which is traveling from India to America and touring around the country and promoting Hindutva ideology. Another thing we're doing is in partnership with Reverend Christie as head of Fiacona and the president of the New York Council of Churches. We've been circulating a Christian leader or clergy letter, also to the U.S. State Department, making basically the same request that India be designated as a country of particular concern. We've been doing this for a few weeks now. We have approximately 175 signatures so far, including, I believe at last count, 12 bishops, 9 of whom are UMC bishops, the president of Wesley Theological Seminary, the former president general secretary of the National Council of Churches, and a number of other heavy hitters. And we are hoping that this goes to the U.S. Secretary of State, as well as that this draws the attention of the American Church and the UMC, of course, in particular. So with that, there are certainly other things that one can do. This is what we are doing right now, and what we, and I believe, can be done as India is in a situation with the complete predominance of this Hindu nationalist movement, where 250 to 300 million Indian minorities, Christians and Muslims in particular, but also Sikhs, and then also Hindu Dalits, those formerly known as untouchables, and then also just everybody else, Hindus who are offering dissent or criticism, where these people are all at extreme threat. Violence is already occurring at mass levels in particular regions, but it's right at the point where if we don't do something as Americans, but also speak out as the church in America, the situation could be disastrous.